Hello, hello. Oh my God, Aisha, thank you for being here. I just want to say welcome everyone. Dr. Lonny Ivy Brooks, Professor of Strategic Communication, Foresight, and Afrofuturism at Cal State East Bay, yay, and co-founder of the AfroRithm Futures Group with Ahmed Best, and co-founder of the Community Futures School with Nina Woodruff. And through our imagination game, Algorithms for the Future, we invite people to envision liberatory futures rooted in what I call ancestral intelligence that we're going to talk about a lot today, the wisdom we inherit from those who dreamed before us. And this is the second episode in our 5-part unscripted series about the importance of imagining the future we want to live in. So I'm so thrilled to continue the conversation today with Aisha Shillingford, artist, world builder, artistic director of Intelligent Mischief. I love that name. An art and design lab that uses culture, humor, and speculative imagination to shape just and joyful futures. Oh my God, thank you for being here. Aisha, thank you for joining me. Thank you for you all being here today. Just some logistics too before I reintroduce Aisha again. We're streaming live on LinkedIn Live and YouTube. So if you found us today via LinkedIn or YouTube, be sure to sign up at www.rwjf.org/unscripted to receive updates on this series and future conversations. Wherever you're joining us from, we're so glad you're here. And yes, this conversation is being recorded and it'll be available publicly later today. A big thank you to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for giving us this platform and the unscripted freedom to talk honestly about futuring, like how we anticipate the future, imagine the future, and create tomorrow that we can help us build healthier and more equitable communities today. Again, thank you. And while Aisha and I are in conversation, I invite you all to be in conversation with each other on the chat. Tell us, like, where are you joining from? How are you feeling right now in one word? And if you know it, what indigenous people's land are you on? That's what I love, what Keolu Fox asked me yesterday, and asked us all yesterday, and I love that. I'm on Ohlone land in the Bay Area. And also, if you hear anything today that inspires you as a phrase, as a statement, as a comment, as a feeling, we're going to make a sticker out of it. So drop those sticker phrases in the chat today based on anything you hear today in our conversation. I love stickers. KO loves stickers. Something that you put on. My daughter has all the stickers in the world, I think, on her computer. But yesterday's conversation, I think, set the tone really well, beautifully, reminding us that imagination isn't a luxury. It's a survival strategy, actually. So today, Aisha and I are going to build on that thread. And I wanted to, come to this question with Aisha after I asked her to introduce herself again too, exploring how Black imagination, art, and spiritual practice can become infrastructure for repair, transformation, and collective liberation. So with that, I wanted to ground our conversation in place, presence, and gratitude, and ask you, Aisha, let's dive in. Can you expand on what you've been doing and how you came to do the work you do? And I'd just like to start there.
Oh wow. Amazing. Yeah, and thank you for such an enthusiastic welcome. It's a really great energy to enter this space with, and I'm so honored to be joining you in this second conversation of the series. Um, wow, it's hard to exactly say how exactly I came to be doing this work because when I reflect, I think I was always meant to be doing it in some way. But if I think about the path here, I mean, I was a community organizer and social movement builder for a really long time. And I think, in organizing and movement building, you're sort of always engaging communities and making decisions collectively about what they desire, even if that decision is pretty short term. And I started thinking more about the long future in relationship to some work that I was doing with Norma Wong, Roshi Norma Wong, who's based in Hawaii. And I was working at that time at a place called Movement Strategy Center. And I was a network weaver, and we were bringing together people who were working across the climate movement, gender-based violence prevention movement, and youth organizing. And we were sort of like recognizing that, ultimately all of these movements are about ending domination, extraction, and violence, and creating a
Mm,
world based on love, regeneration, and interdependence. And
mm,
what Norma invited us to do was to think about the cycle of that transformation within the sense of a longer arc. To think
mm.
about it within the arc of 7 generations. She's an indigenous person from Hawaii. And so she was inviting us into an indigenous worldview, both in terms of the past and the future, and inviting us to situate ourselves in the middle of an arc that stretches back 7 generations and stretches forward 7 generations, and
Wow.
to really imagine a world that our descendants would be living in. And then think about how that imagining impacts the way we're approaching our movement building and our organizing and our change work now. So that was really my introduction. And I was captivated by that. Like, it felt so poetic. And it was kind of the time scales that I felt comfortable thinking in. And then, you know, stumbled onto world building for a project I was doing, and I was like, there's a relationship here between world building in the speculative fiction sense and this long arc dreaming and imagining. And so that was the beginning of that journey. And honestly, not that long ago, I've got to say like 2016 maybe was the beginning of that orientation.
Oh wow. That reminds me, that's just about when the Black speculative arts movement emerged.
Mm.
And that came out of a an exhibition at the uh, Schoenberg Hall Center
Yep.
for Black Research.
Yep.
And they had an exhibition on unveiling the imagination, the Black imagination. Um,
Hmm.
and it was so cool just to see that art, the explosion of Afrofuturist art. But I also, I want to come back to this question. Okay, so you described unleashing Black imagination as central to your work. So
Hmm.
when Black folks are given full permission to dream without constraint, what worlds become possible? Okay, go. No.
What's funny? I went to see this short film. It's not a short film. It's a 2 hour film, new film by Khalil Joseph, based on his exhibit Black News, Terms and Conditions. And basically in the film, he's referencing the tradition of Black imagination, basically that the tradition that, you know, begins the minute enslaved ancestors start off against their will on this ship and are saying, like, actually, no, I want to be free. Like, I'm gonna, some folks were like, I'm gonna jump off this thing and swim back. Some folks were like, I'm determined to get back home, and so on. And so, and what one thing that the film reminded me that I feel really aligned with is that it's nothing less than freedom, and
Mm,
thinking about, I always like personally like think back to the idea of Harriet Tubman never having experienced freedom, imagining freedom and creating a literal movement around it. Um, and I think, though in our work, we sort of think about that as our tradition, that when Black folks are imagining freedom, everyone gets free. Because the systems and structures have to change so dramatically to allow for Black liberation that everyone is included within that. Yeah, so it's freedom, collective liberation for everybody.
yeah, I was just I've been enthralled with your exhibition in Brooklyn around imagining reparations in
Hmm.
2165.
Hmm.
And I saw that it's like actually happening now. I thought like maybe it had occurred and I missed it, but it's happening through like March of
Yeah, through
next year.
March. Yep.
And I was just enthralled. I was like wondering if you could just describe some of that exhibition, you
Yeah.
know, um, because it reminds me a lot of other things that have been going on before and things that we still need
Hmm.
now
Hmm.
to dream about that. Um, can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about
Yeah.
that?
So it's kind of an exhibition and a space. Like, our intention was really to create a space where people could come together to practice repair through 6 different lenses. When we
Mm,
were creating it, and we were sort of in a small circle of the, co-creators and curators, we were thinking like, what does repair mean to us? I'd spent about a year in a narrative lab for reparations with Liberation Ventures.
Oh,
And was just like thinking about, okay, like we kind of all understand reparations being about the return of stolen wealth, or the compensation for stolen labor and land and so on. But what is it that we are repairing? And so we thought about the relationships that had been fractured and harmed, by systems of harm, slavery, white supremacy, and so on. And we thought about reparations or repair through 6 realms. So there's a
yeah.
sense of like repairing our relationship with ourselves, like knowing ourselves, our traditions, loving ourselves, like our bodies, our culture, our languages, etc. The second realm is the realm of relationship in our communities,
Mm,
near and far. So within our own local communities, but also diasporic. The third is repair of relationship with our systems and structures. Like we're in this very antagonistic relationship historically with our systems, like our governance, economics, and so on. So what does it look like to repair that relationship? And then there's repair of our relationship with the land. How do we reclaim our knowledge and understanding of land and non-human beings? Know the names of things, like be in with the earth, like understand like our watersheds and how those systems work and so on. And then we sort of shift to like repairing relationship with the cosmos, looking back
mm,
at the stars, realigning with the cycles of the sun and moon and stars. And then last but not least, and this is just like our framing, there's so many other relationships to repair. We think about repairing our lineages, so our relationship with our ancestors and with our future descendants. And so we did all of that, thinking, and then we did a series of 6 world building sessions, one for each realm. About 120 people showed up online, which was beautiful and exciting.
wow.
And then we took all of those, the worlds that were built in those 6 sessions, turned that into like a massive manifesto, and then shared that and the
Mm,
recordings with 6 Afrofuturist artists who each was invited to interpret any element of the world. We didn't want to restrict them at all, so they could interpret or create an artifact from any aspect of the world or something they had been thinking about relative to their understanding. And so there's 6 artifacts in the space. And then the space itself is like what we call a social dream space. So people come in, we
mm,
have events, and people are just kind of practicing repair, like through whatever lens of understanding they have, like other community members. So people can come interact with the artworks. They're all interactive, multi-sensory, like multi-dimensional, like they respond, or you can touch them or be inside of them. Some of them are responsive and so on. And then people are just running programs in there, like open mics, and we're doing like a somatic repair singing circle in a couple weeks.
mm.
And so we're inviting community members to activate that space and almost kind of make it like almost like a cultural center for repair, um, and inviting people to interpret that however they like. We have guided meditations, and so on. Yeah, it's a really beautiful space, and you should definitely come if you come to New York before March.
What you're doing is just, I love it because I work with Ahmed Best,
Hmm.
co-founder of the AfroRithm Futures Group, and he has a whole talk about feeling the future,
Yes.
and
Yep.
I just think, like Gil Scott Heron talks about the future will not be televised, but I feel like
Hmm.
the future will be felt. It will be
Yes.
immersive. It will be,
Yes.
shape who we are, our minds, you
Hmm.
know, uh, and how do we create those immersive futures? And I feel like that's just what you're doing,
Mm.
and it reminds me of another collaborator of mine, Sarah King. She
Mm.
has what she's creating Mind Heart AI, a mirror of loving awareness.
Oh, wow.
That
That sounds beautiful.
she has a systems awareness map to visualize your emotions, and I feel like that's what you're doing through this exhibition.
Mm.
Especially her systems awareness map is addressing intergenerational trauma, and
Right.
I feel like what you're doing, because I read you have a tea, you have a meditation
Hmm.
in this exhibition too, and I like you talked about somatic spaces, and I just feel like it's this healing
Yeah.
that we need, right?
Yeah.
This healing, and I feel like that's a reparation. It's a
Yep.
reparation of immersive healing that I'm
Hmm.
feeling. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly it. I'm just like vibing. It's like great to hear you encapsulate it or reflect it that way. Yeah, it's all about affect and aesthetics and immersion. Um, yeah.
it, it's it's like that's where, so that's where when we created the game AfroRhythms in the Future too, it's like an immersive world building game.
Hmm.
So what does a world look like with more Black storytelling
Yes.
and less white supremacy?
Hmm.
What does that mean? And what do you create as artifacts in the future, if it's 10
Right.
years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? Unleashing our radical imagination around that.
Hmm.
Because some things that I was vibing on when you had your artists interpret those those experiences, we've had artists come and, as we do these game events, to create artifacts based on what people, to draw the artifacts that people were coming up with.
Amazing.
And I
Yeah.
just, yeah,
What have been some of your favorite artifacts that folks have created?
we've had a park, like someone created a park of the future where people would come to grow food and give food
Yes.
away,
Hmm.
so it became this generous public park, which
Hmm.
felt like it felt like a nurturing park, the park of
Yes.
nourishment. And I just love that. And Stacey Robinson did this amazing drawing of it. He's an Afrofuturist based in
I
Urbana
know,
Champaign.
I know
Yeah.
him. I know
You
him.
know him.
Yeah.
And to top it off, he's a DJ too. Like he's created Black Utopias, and then he's created musical landscapes. I'm like, wait, I want to become a DJ
Oh,
now.
I love that. Interestingly enough, I have a link for you to
Yeah.
potentially become a DJ, but I'll talk about it
Oh,
another time.
okay, okay.
And it's very
Yeah.
related to like somatics and healing and like, sonic experiences and so on. I'll share it with you.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, because the thing I'm vibing on, what you're talking about, is how do we create?
Mm.
We have the AI that's given to us right now,
Hmm.
but I feel like community AIs are beginning to become more and more important. How do we
Hmm.
create like what I think of as mothership AI? You
Yeah.
know, the AI that reflects us.
Yes. I've
That's
been in some really interesting conversations about that, um, including like Stephanie Dinkins was doing an installation in downtown Brooklyn where she was attempting to sort of create almost like a bespoke real-time data set on a small language learning model such that it's not um, quote unquote polluted by like the vast amount of data on the internet. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that as well. Like, how do we own our data and then own our own, language learning models so that, to your point, like it's reflecting our realities. And one other thing I was thinking about is how is there a way for the AI to sort of reflect some of the imagined futures? Um,
yes,
because one thing I noticed, like when you mentioned the artifact of the park, I think over time when we do these world building sessions, especially with Black folks, there's a lot of resonance of the kinds of ideas, and some of it is like a remembering, and I love to think about the relationship between imagination and memory. But I think like if there was like a way to like kind of coalesce, like what are the big ideas, that people are really desiring and like pointing towards as a collective. I just feel like that would be really interesting to reflect back to everyone. And part of me desires like a big kind of database that we own and that can be owned collectively, that where folks could kind of plug in, like, I want to see that garden or that park, and then like, there could be an image or something, almost like a sim. Um, that's like a
yes.
dream.
Yes, seriously. In fact, that's what Sarah and her assistant Kirsten, her collaborator Christian, were talking about. Were that like, if you put into this data set around your emotions, you get back something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe it's a stipend or something like that. You get back something.
Yep.
You know, it's the same thing. Like when I think about the game and created artifacts, you get back your ownership of the artifact or something like that,
Yep.
so that it becomes a future reparation of some sort that you have as
Yes.
part of your private data, you
Yep.
know.
Yep. We got to create it.
Yes, totally. I love this so much, and I have tons of questions for you too. Like I'm just like thinking about, um, also like when I think about how do you see how do you move fluidly between like collage, installation, text, and experiential design
hmm
when you imagine the future?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking about that all the time. And one of the ways that helps me think about that movement is like for me, everything is world building.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
always world building. And I was really struck when I started my collage practice. Um, it was
mm,
after my world building practice. So I was doing world building like with groups and organizations. And then I started making collages. And then I realized, oh, I'm world building here. It's just a particular type of collages that I do. And all of it is about the layers of the world, and I start with like
yeah.
cosmos and then land and then bring like, you know, uh, you know, humans and so on. So I just think of it as like, okay, like, am I building a world? What medium am I building the world within today? Is it a collage? Is it an installation? Because my desire is for people to be inside and part of the world. Um, like, and some of it is about capacity. Collaging is something I could do every day. Whereas
Yes.
world building, we could probably, I mean, in terms of installations, could probably only do one or two large ones a year. Um, and I remember the first one we did, like my intention was very much to make it like a 3D version of the collage, like especially in terms of texture and color and elements and so on. So it's really that like the installations are like three-dimensional versions, or the collages are like blueprints, that kind of thing, sketches and so on. But it feels like they're almost like fractals of each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I feel like I'm enthralled with the idea of fractal design and
Mm-hmm.
aesthetics. Like that's part of Black culture, part of Black diasporic and African culture.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm so inspired by Ron Eglash's book, Fractal Design, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's linked to modern computing.
Yep.
You know, uh,
Yeah.
because of those recursive links, that recursive design
Mm-hmm.
that I realized in reading his work and the work of Natrice Gaskins, who does AI art,
Mm-hmm.
um, that that idea of recursive looping in fractal design came through a
Mm.
game of geomancy, made its way to Europe,
Wow.
and then when European mathematicians discovered it, they thought they had found God.
Wow.
And basically, that became the basis for zeros and ones.
Yep.
So, philosophically, hello, the African continent created computing. All right, let's just
Well,
say
exactly. And then the
it.
irony is now also the components are being extracted, right? Like for
Yes.
modern computing. So it's just like so much to hold in terms of just legacy and knowledge, and then like where we are
Yeah.
now.
It's like right. I mean, it's that large erasure of of our knowledge
hmm
through colonialism
hmm
that I'm up against every day.
Yeah.
Like we've lived that post apocalypse. We're living through the
Yes.
post apocalypse of knowledge taken from us.
hmm
Philosophical foundations taken and reappropriated, and like we are having to recover our knowledge again and amplify
hmm
it. And that's what I'm like, we're in the stage of recovering our stories, right?
hmm
And amplifying them into the future. And that's why I love the name of your organization, because I feel like it's the good trouble we're up to, Intelligent Mischief. like like that is such an awesome name.
Yeah, I have to give full credit to my partner who founded it, and yeah, created that name
I
for
mean,
it.
it feels like playing resistance at once, and I'm like wondering how you use play and satire and mischief as
Oh my
tactical
gosh.
tools, you know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we kind of got started one of our first projects early on, a little bit before my time, was this like satirical uh, book called the Black Body Survival Guide. And it was supposed to be based on the zombie apocalypse survival guide. And
Oh,
the folks who were involved at the time, because I just kind of joined when they were doing this book. It was kind of like around the time of the Trayvon Martin murder and the subsequent acquisition of his murderer.
yeah.
And it was just kind of like facing the absurdity of like people acknowledging, the jury acknowledging that it did happen the way it was told, but there was like a but, like it was like, but
Yeah.
this person, and it was just kind of like, wow, like it's like there's nothing that you can tell Black folks that we should do to prevent this absurdity. People would say you should just go along, you should comply, you should put your hands up, you should stay inside. And it was like none of that actually prevents this from happening, because it's
Mm,
not about us and what we do. It's about the systems that encroach and incarcerate and devalue. And so we created a satirical survival guide, that was sort of giving these tongue-in-cheek tips and tricks. We call it Black Boy Survival Guide: Tips, Tricks, and Tools for Navigating a So-Called Post-Racial Society with a Black Body. And
wow.
some of the tips were ridiculous and silly, because they're not meant to make
Yeah,
sense, because we shouldn't have to, uh, you know, like,
right.
you know, abide by certain, you know, tips or approaches. Like, really, the society should be not racist,
Yeah.
and so some of our tips were like, oh, and it's so relevant now. Like, we had a tip that was like, if the chapters were kind of like around policing and the criminal justice system, migration, climate, gender, and so on. And under migration, we said, like, here, this tool was like a invisibility cloak, so that if like ICE is
Yes.
coming, you just throw this cloak, and there's a size that you could throw on a person, and there's a size you can like throw on a whole neighborhood, and they just won't see it. And it's like part of it
Wow.
is like part of the satire is like there's a lot of grief behind satire, right? And it's kind of like, if
Mhm.
you laugh to not cry, because in reality,
Yeah.
like, if only we could protect our communities this way with some kind of magical cloaking device, we could. And we kind of have in the past, right? With in terms of like um like stealthy ways of protecting folks and so on. But so that's just an example of where we've used a bit of satire um in the past. And like we try to throw in a little bit of humor here and there as we go, kind of keep that trickster element alive, because there's a lot of imagination in that, you know
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that trickster element is so important part of the way that we approach futures thinking in Afrofuturism,
yeah.
indigenous futurism and queer futurism. Like that's so important. Like you have to have comedy, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and and even in like the traditional approach to looking at signals of the future,
Hmm.
things that can scale up to be bigger in the future, like drones or but art seems to go not as addressed in traditional futures thinking,
Hmm. Hmm.
so like we call it ace deep in the community future school. It's art,
Oh
society,
wow.
technology, environmental, economic, and political signals that you look for, but
Hmm.
art starts the list. like
Hmm.
like what are people listening to, what's
Yeah.
getting them stirred up musically, what's inspired them artistically. Like Joshua May's murals in Oakland kind of
Hmm.
saturate some part of our downtown landscape, and I'm just like, oh my god, I want to
Wow.
live in that future, you know
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that, into like not just integration, but like prioritizing of art, because it feels like it speaks to what I found to be like a tension sometimes in foresight work around kind of, sometimes I feel like if as Black people we were to just look at signals and scale them up, it would just be dystopia. It's like, yeah, it's racist now,
Right.
it'll be more racist. Like, it's oppression now, like, but I think like
Yeah.
art helps bring in like desire and like what do you want and like how do we shape and sort of how do we create the future, not just respond to what it's likely to be. So I love that. I might incorporate that like a little bit if, that's really, really cool.
I, I have to say, like, I'm excited. Like, Ahmed and I and Jade Fabello are writing a book called "Be the Signal" that talks about,
Yes.
because like we are the signals, and marginalized communities like us have usually been on the edge of innovation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and it's time to like bring that forward and say yes. Like be the signal because we have been the signal
Yes,
for
I love
500 years.
that. Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly, exactly. I love that so much. I can't wait to read that book. When is it coming out? Do you know?
Well, we're finishing it. We're looking for
Mm-hmm.
publishers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of shopping it around. And, this is my shameless plug moment, but I'm like, yes,
Yes.
because we want to get that out. And I think it's just there's so many undiscovered stories that we need
Yes.
to address. You know,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's
and
yeah. Oh, I can't wait to read it. I'm very excited about it. Um, I see this question in the chat.
oh yeah,
Just is asking, what do you say to yourself as you're working on your collages? What does the self-talk sound like?
ooh,
Um, okay, so one thing I'm saying to myself during collage making is I'm asking questions. And I'm kind of asking those questions of, one could say, my inner self or
yeah,
my guides or the universe, because I'm in a kind of more liminal space where I'm not, I mean, I don't know what part of my brain it is, but it's not the like problem solving analytical part.
mm,
It's more the part that feels inspired and intuitive. And so I'm asking, like, what color does this sky want to be? Or like
mm,
what mountain wants to be here? What vegetation wants to be
mm,
in this world? Who wants to be here? What are they doing? So I'm kind of asking those questions, and sometimes I'm also asking the artwork. Like if I put down a
mm,
background and then I step back and I'm just asking it, like, what do you want to be in relationship with? And kind of allowing that image to come to my mind, kind of step by step. Um, and then sometimes I do hear back. Sometimes I see a response. Like I just can see something there. Like it's these colors. Like recently, I just made a piece where I was like, oh, I really feel like these Ansel Adams black and white mountains. I love putting those in the artwork, and there needs to be like a range, and it needs to be shaped like this. So
mm,
sometimes I'm like seeing it like materialize in my inner eye, I guess. And sometimes there's like a voice, and it's not from outside of my head. It's like I hear words that sort of say, try this. And then the ego-y, maybe like doubting part of me is like, no, no, no. And then like that voice will kind of get loud, like, try this. And I'm like, okay, okay, I have to trust you. I get it. I have to trust you. Um, and then I put that object or, shape or being like into the artwork. Um, so yeah, that's the full disclosure
wow.
of one artist's internal process. Thank you for that question, whoever asked that. That's a nice question.
That's an awesome, awesome question. I love it. The self-talk is so important. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of when we talk about futuring, what drives us in our futuring process,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I'm inspired by that. Because that
Mm.
self-talk is the same thing that drives being the signal, right? You are the
Mm-hmm.
signal. You have
Yes.
agency, and how do we help people see that imagination is part of their daily self-talk, like they do it already, you know
Yes. Yep.
like
Yeah.
like what I'm going to eat tomorrow, I have to brush my teeth in 5 minutes, or but like how do we kind of scale up the imagination,
Yep.
you know
Exactly. Well, it makes me curious, like what is it that drives you in the imagination work?
yeah, I think what I've always been inspired by is a world where people have enough,
Mm-hmm.
and what can they do more? Like I love the
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek universe. Like money
Mm-hmm.
isn't an issue anymore.
Right.
It's just like what would I do? I already have $1 billion. What do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
Or like I don't have to worry about getting health insurance. I don't have to worry about the quality of my education. Now, what do I do? You
Right.
know,
Right.
and so kind of that drives me as a driving question.
Mm-hmm.
Inspiring me, and you know, so creating like I'm imagining a backstory to AfroRhythms as a graphic novel.
Yes.
Like an ancient civilization
Mm-hmm.
uh, is destroyed, and in their mothership AIs, they come to Earth, but they have to adapt to Earth and ask help from the African tribes there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they embed their knowledge in African textiles too.
Yes. Oh my
So it's a
gosh.
blending and weaving of native Earth knowledge with
Yes.
mothership AI from the galactic
Love
beyond.
that. I love that. Oh my gosh.
And we actually kind of had a film about that called the multi-species planetary garden.
Yes, get it.
um, and it was like takes place 1,000 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
and we were doing this as part of an exhibition of where art and science collide. But like the idea was, it was with the Fathomers, and,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea was, in a future of biology, can we have dancers that would create and grow crops on a distant,
Mm. Mm.
and it was so fun because these dancers were on fire, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Even Ahmed's wife was one of the dancers, and she was on fire. They were all on fire. They were great. We had like a Japanese dancer. We had another. Oh, they were just beautiful. So the idea of creating through dancing,
Yes. Oh,
you know,
yep.
it's like Natasha Walmack and her process
Mm-hmm.
futurism is in dance. Love that. You
Yes.
know, so like when I think about what inspires me, it's all these other artists like you
Yep.
included, just inspire me to get up in the morning and say, hey, what if we do that? What if
Yes.
we try that? you know um, um, Even making the uh, Afro Rhythm from the Futures game, it involved a village, a collective effort, right? I love
Mm-hmm.
those collective efforts. I think that's the future. When we talk about the future of work, I think it's not so much we got to reshift that as the future of who do you want to work with every day?
Right.
Who do you
Right.
want to wake up with every day and
Right.
just collaborate on something, that's not necessarily extractive, but that you're just having fun doing it,
Right.
you know? And that's like, having the opportunity to work with Alan Clark as an artist in Oakland, and now he's in
Mm-hmm.
Portland. Working with these designers just inspired me.
Mm.
So that's what I say. Like when Ronaldo Anderson, the founder of the Black Speculative Arts movement, came to me and he said, "Can you start a conference in the Bay Area?" I was like, "What? I don't want to do that." I was like, "That's a lot of work," but like that's how I met folks and got
Right.
inspired by artists and
Right.
Afrofuturism. So I think kind of like going beyond yourself,
Yeah.
in a transcendent way, is what calls to us and calls to our ancestors and the dreamers before us.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that resonates so deeply with me. It also makes me wonder because you are like just so like creative and like full of energy, and I wonder how do you protect your imagination, especially when it feels sometimes like a lot of things in our environment are working to curb our imaginations. Like, how do you protect that space for dreaming other than the systems that are around us?
Well, my mom read every day after work. She would
Mm,
come home and
mhm,
be on a couch reading.
mhm.
And I became a reader. And for
Mm,
me, the way I protect my imagination is by reading other science fiction and
yes. Mhm,
fiction and nonfiction. But like reading science fiction inspires me, like N.K. Jemisin's,
mhm,
Earth trilogy, Nnedi Okorafor's work, Sherry Renee Thomas's work. Like
mhm,
that that feeds me. And
mm,
that's how I
mhm,
protect my imagination, by reading other works, because I
mhm.
get inspired by science fiction. And then like how do I create that in
Right.
the world?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
love that. Oh, that's so beautiful and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. And just quickly, how do you do that too before? How do you inspire
Um,
and protect your imagination? I'm curious.
making sh I make sh similarly like and also like making sure that I'm like really protecting my space from making art. Um, and honestly kind of filtering inputs, like filtering news, really being very selective about my inputs, especially at the beginning of the day when it feels like, the mind is very receptive and kind of open to, how you're shaped.
Yeah.
So meditation,
Yes.
for sure. Meditation, reading about like people who did so much cool stuff, like,
Yeah.
in harder times in a way, like
Yeah.
and being like, okay, man, if they could do it, I can do this. And yeah, choosing, what I listen to, certain podcasts and so on.
Yeah.
Right now I'm listening to like What's the Point podcast with Chantel
Oh.
Martin.
Oh. Okay.
Really, really good, where she interviews a lot of other artists about their practice and just what their lives are like, as artists. And I think that kind of, I just intentionally keep myself in a little bubble sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. You know what? I would want to talk to you for another 2 hours, and it was such a wonderful conversation. I'm still buzzing for the ideas we explored together.
Yeah,
Like
me
how do
too.
we go from a world based in what my circle says, and a producer of Asian American stories talks about, Jocelyn Fabello, going from fear, consumerism, and extraction to a future of healing and repair and nurturing and kinship. So before we say goodbye, this is your last call to drop any sticker ideas into the chat. And remember, if inspiration strikes you in the middle of the night, you can always email us at unscripted@rwjf.org because we're listening. Again, if you found us today via LinkedIn or YouTube, be sure to sign up at rwjf.org/unscripted so you don't miss future conversations in this series. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Aisha, for talking with me today. I just feel like I've been
Thank
like
you.
so honored with your sacred space. And before we go though, I want to pass the mic to you, Aisha, because you're hosting tomorrow's episode of Unscripted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who are you going to be in conversation with, and what can we look forward to?
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going to be chatting with Laura Nissen. Um, and I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about yet, but what I am curious about is we both have a social work background. So I'm looking forward to chatting about the role of social work in shaping the future and shaping the future of social work through the lens of care. That's kind of what I'm going and thinking about, but
Wow.
really looking forward to like, seeing where that conversation goes with Laura tomorrow.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm so blown away right now. And thank you for bringing the healing, the satire, the comedy, the intelligent mischief to our conversation. So
Thank
just
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
And thank you all. So I'm gonna end the conversation now. And please drop in those sticker ideas too. Thank you.